In a far, far away year of 2014, when the Scouts lost their battle to even edgier kids and when many unraveled their passion for volleyball, some series showed us how to yes and some showed us how to not. Among them, a few unexpected blasts from the past emerged and proved that even a quarter-century-old manga, now 35 years old, can be turned into a modern masterpiece if done right. Hello comrade, my name is Mahis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me, we got a right hand to exploit. A quick disclaimer, there are no major spoilers in this video as we are going to touch on how the story is written and not necessarily where it goes. Consequently, if you want to watch the show completely blind, go ahead and do so before watching this video. Although, I dare say that my 2 cents will prepare you for the journey and enhance it by directing you into the right mindset. The Parasyte manga first aired in 1988 and had a pretty good run until its story was concluded in 1995. Then, after nearly 2 decades of silence, Madhouse chose this Pokemon for their next adaptation and headed towards the arena to give the Anime of the Year a shot, as they have truly done a fantastic job. They stayed faithful to the source material, the art style was modernized, and the liberties that the studio took were very reasonable. Like, look at this scene. They replaced a newspaper with a tablet to make the setting more in tune with our current timeline. Unfortunately, those few years were beaming with new crazy successful titles, and the tale of Japanese body snatchers from the previous century got way less attention than it deserved. Don't get me wrong, people have still watched it and it received a lot of praise, but it completely slipped through the cracks and nobody was talking about it since, even though it aged like fine wine and is more relevant now than the day it was written. Here's where you probably ask, what's so special about it that I dare to imply its superiority over Attack on Titan, JoJo and another dozen phenomenal shows? Well, it's nothing, really. There is no super elaborate plot, only a handful of characters and a pretty short run of 24 episodes. However, I put it on a pedestal because every aspect of this anime is done masterfully. Yeah, fuck it, Nyan perfectly, and it checks every single box in my long list of wants and criterias. For starters, the plot is about some alien spores coming to Earth, hatching and infesting random people, completely hijacking their bodies. As a result, the original human is no more and there is nothing that can be done about it. However, the parasite that was about to eat the main character's brain fails due to our boy's reaction time and skills a squeaky clean teenage boy shouldn't have. Yes, that was both a pun and a truth. Shinichi is a standard nerdy-ish high school MC with perfectly normal parents no less. Seriously, his dad is probably the daddest dad I've seen in all anime.
新一に怒鳴られちゃったわ。
なんだ、マスでも書いてたか?
Because the larva couldn't make it to his brain before maturing, the alien had to settle for Shinichi's right arm to avoid death, and now these two have to coexist, figure each other out, not get killed in the process, you know, all that regular Japanese school curriculum. It's not that simple though, because the parasites are wreaking havoc, and our protagonist is faced with a difficult choice, to stay on the sidelines or get involved, as he is a unique snowflake who has a perspective on both sides of the conflict. The humans who just want to survive and keep their loved ones safe, and the parasites that are continuously coming up with better and less conspicuous ways to munch on our juicy flesh. From there, we descend into a borderline existential trip about the struggle of two species alien to one another and observe it through the eyes of a very diverse cast of characters. You're right, I did mention the amount of them being comparatively small, yet there are plenty memorable ones, each bringing something unique to the table. Firstly, we have the main duo, Izumi Shinichi and Satomi Murano, two students who have known each other for a number of years, attend the same school, and are even somewhat a thing. Why do I include her as the main character when most of the action happens around Shinichi and his parasite? Because Murano, aside from being her own character, is used to reflect his psychological state. You see, our protagonist has seen some serious shit, and continues to do so almost on a daily basis, so it's no surprise that all this carnage and secrecy caused a certain shift in his behavior, which is clearly shown through their interactions and specifically through this one question that many viewers find annoying. Are you still the Izumi Shinichi I know? It is such a vital part of the narrative, as you can really tell what state his mind is at the moment of the answer. He does in fact change. He goes through the 5 stages of grief about this whole situation, and they're displayed extraordinarily well. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Full stop here. We're getting a bit too close to spoilers. Back to these guys. Their dynamic reminds me a lot of Arthas at the Calling of Stratholme. For those uncultured, he was chasing the source of the plague that ravaged his kingdom when he found out that everyone in the city got infected and were about to turn into undead that would have bolstered the enemy forces, further endangering his land. Quite a pickle that sparked the moral dilemma of whether to purge or abandon the city, and he made a decision only a king could. Unfortunately, his closest allies couldn't bring themselves to do it because killing people is wrong and blah blah blah, leaving Arthas without any emotional support, which later resulted in him choosing vengeance over his own people. How does this relate to RMC? Murano is that one last connection he has with his humanity, and her asking him whether he is still Izumi Shinichi keeps tipping the scales in the right direction. Pay attention to how Shinichi's mental state correlates with his status with Murano. You'll find a lot of interesting insight. Speaking of whom, Satomi doesn't get as much development and instead gets a lot of hate for being melodramatic, all puppy-eyed, etc. But what do you expect? Unlike all these parasites, government agents, and other menaces to society, she's just a high school girl whose boyfriend is wrapped into some Stephen King shit that he's not able to talk about. No shit, she keeps asking the same questions because she never gets the fucking answer. Moreover, her feelings aren't going to disappear just because he looked at her funny or said something weird. She is really concerned about him, but she can't do nothing because she's constantly denied. That's another thing I like about this show. We don't have a Superman situation where Clark Kent puts some glasses on and boom, nobody suspects anything. Perception is something this anime spends a lot of time on. Mother almost instantly realizes that it's not her daughter anymore. Shinichi's parents notice that something has changed. Heck, people do actually acknowledge that he's acting extremely weird and try to rationalize it. Murano thinks it might be an affair, Kana thinks it's some red thread of fate tying them together, and so on. The truth cannot come out though, because first, it's just plain hard to believe, second, it puts people in jeopardy. Which is kind of funny, because we are shown that both ignorance and knowledge can lead to similarly bad outcomes. Anyway, I find it fascinating how they show what his shenanigans look like from the outside, and this is where the best character of the series comes up. Migi, also known as Shinichi's right-hand parasite. If Murano is reacting to our boy's situation, this dude is commentating. And of course, he's his own unique character with a beautiful arc, but talking about it would be a bit too spoilery. Right off the bat, we are shown how diametrically opposite Migi is in terms of his behavior, thought process, emotions, or lack thereof. He is also incredibly intelligent, to the point where he learned Japanese language in a single day, plus, in contrast to the MC, he operates exclusively on logic and cold hard calculations, which sets up this conflict of interest between them. Shinichi wants to open up by explaining why he's acting so strange, and the right hand threatens his loved ones because telling them will compromise his chances of survival. That's his main goal at first. However, as the time passes and we come across more data in the form of other parasites, he grows increasingly curious about how they fit into this world. Again, Migi is void of empathy or emotions. He doesn't give two shits about the lives of his kin nor humans, yet he is still willing to communicate to expand his own knowledge and understanding. This is yet another interesting part of the narrative. Migi and Shinichi are constantly interacting, while with a very few exceptions, parasites only talk to parasites and humans only talk to humans because it is on site otherwise. It puts our dichotomous duo in an unusual advantage. They can exchange opinions and influence each other. For example, Migi often expresses his negative takes on the human race, saying that out of all the life forms on Earth, we are the closest thing to demons. Shinichi, on the other hand, pun unintended, tries to counter those arguments, and that's where we get their evolution from. Through an open discussion, we discover new points of view and, as a certain scholar said, elevate our thoughts to a higher plane. The show does a great job at this philosophical exploration of self, and the MC is not the only one asking the tough questions. Parasites also take part in this endeavor, albeit in a slightly different way. In general, they are pretty similar to Migi with their rational way of thinking, being able to morph, and focusing on their survival over anything else. Here's where it gets interesting. Initially, it appears that all of them are alike in both nature and in purpose, yet in the span of only a few episodes, we are introduced to a surprising variety of personalities. Sure, they're all poker-faced bloodthirsty monsters, but they have very different opinions of themselves and what they should do. Most think they're peak evolution, while some, who are a bit smarter, think that they are weak and imperfect, wondering what the reason for their existence is. That's surprisingly human, and you can probably already tell where this story will go. Hunter x Hunter had a similar scenario play out during the Chimera Ant arc, well, with similar undertones, that is. Here, Parasites act as the main villains for obvious reasons, and are also no pushovers by any stretch of the imagination. They employ various tactics and evolve in their pursuit of comfortable survival, just like you would in many of the survival games. Start small and unorganized, slowly teching up and building a bigger house. The last major player on this stage is none other than the government, and before you jump to conclusions, they are surprisingly capable. Not exactly the fastest in doing something about the situation, as you know it, I know it, everybody knows it, it always takes a forever and a half for them to get anything done. However, they do at least explain why they stay quiet about the parasites by saying nothing can be gained by going public at this time. Clarification: if people go on a witch hunt against these monsters, there'll just be more casualties, and it will remove the option of staying hidden for the monsters, resulting in more and more tragedies. Demon Slayer should take notes from this to improve their lacking storytelling, as a simple line of dialogue or two can greatly affect your world building. In any case, the officials are working hard on identifying the threat and finding reliable ways of dealing with them. For instance, they've started a trend of removing a strand of hair from the person you're greeting, which helps to identify the alien. Does it really help regular people? No, but it creates more troubles for the parasites, which in turn can cause them to make mistakes and come out a bit more often. More than anything, this emphasizes the power of those who can control the media and how a new trend can start literally out of nowhere if they really need it. Oh, and I didn't forget about saying they are capable. We're going to address it in this following section about the stakes. MC can't save everyone. It becomes painfully apparent as the story develops, and if you watched some of my videos before, you'd probably know that I enjoy stakes, especially high ones. So what's the situation here? Well, this is a very slippery slope, but let's put it this way. We're not fighting for humanity. Instead, we are fighting for humanity. Yes, check the dictionary if it sounds too confusing, but be warned that even a definition of a word can spoil you the plot. Anyway, comparatively speaking, nothing truly bad will happen if the Aizen's inspiration was to fail, other than some people dying, him included. Which brings me to one of the checkboxes in the list of criteria I mentioned in the intro. If we take Shinichi out of the equation, I wholeheartedly believe that their world would have followed a similar route and the aftermath would have been the same. It's not The Quiet Place, where the entire world in the time of great crisis couldn't figure out what a deaf teenage girl did. Our boy is not the one who delivers the final blow, and as much as he participates in taking care of parasites, the government and its people will find a way to deal with this threat regardless of some high schooler intervention. Halfway through the series, Migi says something that describes the show perfectly. This was only a matter of time. There is no need for you to feel responsible. Let it sink in for a second, as this phrase can be interpreted in many different ways, and I'm confident you will find more moments in the story where this line is more than appropriate. Sure, the narrative does have a pretty straightforward development and you can see certain things a mile away, yet there are still a few interesting twists that even I was impressed with. Like, this is mind-blowing here. We actually see the main character getting somewhere with their romantic interest.
Nice.
When was the last time you've seen that, except for maybe the very end giving you a quick glimpse into the future? This is not the main strength of the series though, which we will discuss right after I talk about the largest oopsie this story made, so here's a timecode to skip to if you haven't seen it yet. There's this one character who, after encountering a parasite and surviving no less, does absolutely nothing later on into the show. Yuko Tachikawa, both Shinichi's and Murano's friend who often helps them in their relationship, meaning she's a prominent character we see from start to finish, which only worsens her narrative as she appears to completely ignore being the only human living through a conflict with a parasite. This, in combination with her brother working with the government on the case of man-eating monsters, should have made her a perfect source of information about these fuckers since she successfully used a chemical weapon against them. Oh well, this is partially due to the anime taking some liberty in adapting the manga, where Yuko was only a minor character who appeared exclusively during the Hideo arc, but that still doesn't excuse her from not doing anything later, making this a pretty solid plot hole. Now to the last section of the video, which covers both why this show is so great and simultaneously why people aren't watching it or find it uninteresting. Many have misunderstood the plot and focused on the wrong things. The story was never about the origins of monsters, how they were dealt with, nor what happened next. Instead, it was about the struggle of two alien species to understand one another and overcoming the obstacles they faced along the way. Exploration and philosophy are the main focus here, and if you have Muzan's IQ, you'd probably feel bored. On every forum I see people complaining how the last few episodes were lame or how the show went downhill. Sure, there wasn't that much action and it was full of dialogue or, God forbid, monologue, but that's what brings it all together. Throughout the story, you/the MC has seen many ideologies and points of view. Some extreme, some conflicting, some painfully true. And as a result, Shinichi developed his own understanding of life, kinda like Elric Brothers did on the island, but way more elaborate. The moral of the story: we are the closest thing to demons. We eat everything that moves, and what doesn't we move and eat. We create a lot of wonderful, truly amazing things, and destroy so much in the process. We are the parasites, and the earth is our host, which we continue to waste and consume in our pursuit of comfortable survival. However, we also possess what many species simply don't have the luxury of: a choice to make a conscious decision to stand on the sidelines or get involved, just like our protagonist did. It was I, Mahis, trying to PhD into the microphone. Check out Discord and Patreon in the description if you like. Otherwise, have a great whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers.